When an aircraft disappears without a distress call, it typically indicates a sudden catastrophic event. Modern commercial aircraft have multiple redundant communication systems, making complete silence unusual. Radar coverage can be limited in remote mountainous regions due to terrain blockage. Similar aviation disappearances have occurred when aircraft encountered severe weather or structural failure. The absence of wreckage in initial searches is common in rugged terrain, where debris can be scattered or buried. Investigations typically examine maintenance records, weather data, and pilot communications prior to disappearance. Modern search operations use satellite imagery, radar data analysis, and computer modeling of possible flight paths. The psychological impact on families and investigators is profound when no physical evidence is found. The aircraft vanished from all radar and communication systems, leaving no distress signal or debris field. Search teams combed vast areas using satellite imagery and aircraft, but found no trace for over 2 weeks. This type of disappearance is exceptionally rare in modern aviation, where tracking systems typically provide continuous data. The complete lack of wreckage initially suggested the plane might have disintegrated at high altitude. Survival in such conditions requires overcoming extreme cold, dehydration, and limited oxygen. The human body can endure remarkable deprivation when protected from the elements and conserving energy. Similar survival events in aviation history demonstrate how insulation and rationing can extend life in frozen environments. The psychological challenge of isolation and uncertainty compounds the physical struggle for survival. Regional aircraft of that era relied on basic radio navigation and visual flight rules, which became unreliable in mountainous terrain. Glaciated mountain ranges create unique microclimates, where weather can shift from clear skies to whiteout conditions in minutes. The combination of high altitude and severe weather presents multiple hazards, including icing, turbulence, and navigation signal degradation. Multinational search operations in remote regions require coordination between military, civil aviation, and local authorities across borders. Search aircraft in such operations typically use visual scanning patterns supplemented by electronic detection methods available at the time. The limited radar coverage in remote mountainous areas meant search teams often relied on eyewitness reports and last known position calculations. Weather patterns in high-altitude regions can create false radar returns and interfere with communication systems. Such search operations faced logistical challenges, including limited daylight hours, fuel constraints, and the vast search area. In the pre-satellite era, search operations relied on visual sightings and radio triangulation, making location in remote areas extremely difficult. The terrain's harsh conditions, extreme cold, high altitude, and rugged landscape, severely limited ground search capabilities and visibility. Standard search protocols of the time dictated scaling back operations after several days without findings, based on survival probability calculations. This decision reflected common aviation emergency procedures, where prolonged searches in inaccessible regions were deemed impractical. The assumption of total loss was a standard conclusion when no wreckage or signals were detected within the critical survival window. However, survival mechanisms in extreme environments, like shelter construction and resource conservation, can sometimes defy initial assessments. This pattern contrasts with typical search outcomes, where most missing aircraft in such conditions are never found with survivors. The transition from active search to presumed loss marks a critical juncture in many historical disappearance cases. The aircraft did not explode in midair, but instead struck the mountainside directly. This impact caused the wreckage to slide into a deep crevasse or glacial valley. Almost immediately, a subsequent avalanche or heavy snowfall buried the site. This burial created a paradoxical situation. While trapping survivors, it also formed an insulated environment. The snowpack acted as a barrier against the lethal winds outside. It also provided thermal insulation, protecting against extreme external temperatures. This phenomenon is observed in other survival scenarios, where snow caves provide temporary refuge. The entombment created a terrifying yet protective chamber that delayed hypothermia. In the aftermath of the disaster, those with medical training among the survivors began immediate triage, prioritizing the most critically injured. This process involved assessing wounds, stemming bleeding with available materials, and providing basic comfort to those in shock. Natural leaders emerged from the group to organize the remaining resources and people. They took inventory of any food and water salvaged from the galley, implementing strict rationing to make supplies last. To secure a drinking water source, they began melting gathered snow, a common survival technique in cold environments. This systematic approach to medical care and resource management was crucial for stabilizing the group's immediate situation. The survivors established a strict daily routine to maintain morale and conserve their limited energy. This psychological discipline was crucial for survival in extreme isolation and resource scarcity. They repurposed wreckage from the fuselage to create their primary shelter. This resourceful adaptation transformed destruction into protection against the elements. The fuselage provided structural integrity that improvised shelters often lack. This approach demonstrates how survivors maximize available resources in emergencies. The combination of routine and shelter created a foundation for prolonged survival. These survival strategies reflect documented patterns in extreme isolation scenarios. The survivors repurposed seat cushions and luggage into insulation, a desperate measure against the extreme cold. This type of improvised insulation is a common survival technique in polar or high-altitude environments to prevent hypothermia. Batteries from emergency transmitters and personal devices were carefully conserved, as power was a finite and critical resource. In survival situations, power management often dictates the priority and function of all electronic equipment. A small shortwave radio or emergency locator transmitter was repaired, representing a crucial attempt to establish communication. These devices are designed to broadcast distress signals on internationally monitored frequencies for search and rescue. However, its signal was too weak to penetrate the immense thickness of ice and snow above them. Dense ice and snow can act as a significant barrier, absorbing and blocking radio frequencies, especially from low-power sources. This left the group in effective radio silence, isolated beneath a natural shield that trapped them as effectively as any prison. The survivors endured a brutal combination of physical injuries, hypothermia, and dehydration. Altitude sickness added to their suffering, causing headaches, nausea, and impaired judgment. Constant darkness created a disorienting environment, where time seemed to lose all meaning. The glacier's groaning sounds, caused by ice shifting under pressure, created a constant background of unsettling noise. This psychological burden was compounded by dwindling hope as rescue efforts faced extreme challenges. Such conditions mirror survival scenarios, where environmental factors become as dangerous as the initial crisis. The combination of physical depletion and psychological stress created a feedback loop that threatens survival. This demonstrates how extreme environments can systematically break down both body and mind. The survivors faced a critical decision: to remain in the wreckage or venture outside into the unknown. Staying put meant relative shelter but isolation, leaving risked exposure to the elements and potential discovery. This choice represents a common survival dilemma, where the known danger must be weighed against unknown external threats. A key limitation in understanding this event is the lost cockpit voice recorder, which erased the pilot's final communications. Without this data, the exact sequence of the pilot's decisions in the final moments remains a gap in the official record. Another common misconception involves conflating the number of immediate fatalities from the crash with those who died during the subsequent 17-day ordeal. This distinction is crucial, as it separates the mechanical failure of the aircraft from the prolonged survival scenario that followed. Such patterns of information loss and conflation are frequent in complex disaster investigations, often obscuring the precise chain of events. The shelter was not a warm refuge, but a space where temperatures remained at or below freezing. This constant cold created a hostile environment, contradicting any notion of comfort. The occupants were not resting. They were engaged in a continuous, exhausting battle against the elements. This slow, fighting retreat describes a gradual loss of warmth and energy over time. Such conditions are a common mechanism in neglect cases, where perception is manipulated to hide reality. The discrepancy between the promised safety and the actual freezing environment forms the core of this deception. Contrary to popular belief, rescue teams did not locate the victims immediately after their distress signal was transmitted. Pinpointing their exact position required extensive technical analysis of the signal's origin. Once located, the rescue operation faced the immense challenge of navigating treacherous, unstable glacial terrain. This difficult access added several agonizing days to the timeline before a recovery could be attempted. A common misconception, often depicted in media, is that they were trapped inside flowing, liquid glacier ice. In reality, they were buried under layers of compacted snow and firn. Firn is an intermediate, granular type of snow found in the upper accumulation zones of glaciers and ice sheets. This dense material can exert tremendous pressure, but lacks the fluid motion of glacial ice streams deep below. The material's porous nature and air pockets created a deceptive structure that appeared less dense than it actually was. Despite its internal voids, the material maintained immense crushing weight that proved immovable under normal circumstances. This event directly influenced aviation safety regulations and prompted immediate changes to emergency protocols. It highlighted the critical need for emergency locator transmitters with significantly longer battery life to ensure continuous operation. The incident demonstrated that signals needed to penetrate various obstructions, including dense materials and terrain features. This accelerated the adoption of newer signal technologies designed for better penetration and detection capabilities. The aviation industry responded by implementing more robust emergency systems with enhanced signal transmission. These technological improvements became standard requirements for aviation safety equipment worldwide. This incident became a core case study in survival training programs worldwide. It highlighted the life-saving importance of immediate organization and rationing of limited resources. Survivors demonstrated using every part of the wreckage for shelter, tools, and signaling. For search and rescue, the event changed protocols for how long to search in glacial regions. It emphasized that survivors in such environments could be insulated by snow and ice, not incinerated. The case stands as a brutal lesson in remote geography. In certain frozen landscapes, a crash site can be rendered completely invisible by weather and terrain. This invisibility makes systematic, persistent search patterns the only possible link back to the living.